Could you learn a century of history in just 5 minutes? Let's find out. Welcome to History in 5 Minutes. Today's adventure, the remarkable story of Australian history from the world's oldest living culture to the modern nation, covering 65,000 years of Aboriginal civilization and the Dreamtime, the first European contact with Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, Captain James Cook's arrival at Botany Bay in 1770, the first fleet, in Britain's brutal convict colony at Sydney Cove, the violent frontier wars and dispossession of Aboriginal peoples, the gold rush of 1851 and the birth of Australian identity, the Eureka Stockade Rebellion, the Federation of Australia in 1901, the ANZAC legend at Gallipoli in World War I, Australia's role in World War II and the threat of Japanese invasion, the post-war immigration boom that transformed the nation, and the long road toward reconciliation with Indigenous Australians. 65,000 years ago, the first Australians arrived on a vast red continent. Aboriginal peoples developed the world's oldest continuous civilization, their deep spiritual connection to the land woven into stories, ceremonies, and sacred sites across every landscape. The Dreamtime is not merely mythology. It is Aboriginal law, science, and spirituality combined. Rainbow serpents carved rivers, ancestral beings shaped mountains, and sacred songlines mapped invisible pathways across Australia, connecting communities across tens of thousands of years. In 1642, Dutch explorer Abel Tasman became the first European to reach the islands he named Van Diemen's Land, modern Tasmania. Sailing for the Dutch East India Company, he charted Australia's southern coastline without fully realizing the enormous continent that lay to the north. In April 1770, British navigator Captain James Cook sailed the Endeavour into Botany Bay on Australia's east coast. He claimed the land for King George III, naming it New South Wales, a decision that would change the continent forever and devastate its Indigenous peoples. In January 1788, 11 British ships known as the First Fleet anchored at Sydney Cove. Captain Arthur Phillip established a brutal convict colony, planting the British flag on Gadigal land. Over 700 convicts disembarked, the foundations of a settler nation built on stolen ground. For over a century, Aboriginal Australians fought desperately to defend their lands in brutal frontier wars. Massacres, forced removals, and introduced diseases decimated populations that had thrived for millennia. Warriors like Pemulwuy led fierce resistance against British colonial expansion across the continent. In 1851, gold was discovered near Bathurst, New South Wales, and at Ballarat, Victoria. Hundreds of thousands of prospectors flooded Australia from around the world: Chinese miners, American adventurers, British workers. The gold rush transformed a penal colony into a bustling, diverse, ambitious nation. In December 1854, gold miners at Ballarat built the Eureka Stockade and raised the iconic Southern Cross flag in open rebellion against British colonial authority. The uprising was crushed in minutes, but the miners' defiant spirit became a powerful symbol of Australian democracy and workers' rights. On January 1, 1901, 6 British colonies united to form the Commonwealth of Australia, one of the world's first federal democracies. Crowds celebrated in Sydney's Centennial Park as Edmund Barton was sworn in as the nation's first Prime Minister, though Aboriginal Australians were excluded from the new constitution. On April 25, 1915, Australian and New Zealand soldiers landed at Gallipoli, Turkey, under withering Ottoman fire. Though the campaign failed strategically, the extraordinary courage of the ANZACs forged Australia's national identity. ANZAC Day remains the most sacred day in the Australian calendar. In 1942, Japanese forces bombed Darwin and threatened invasion of mainland Australia. With British forces overwhelmed, Prime Minister John Curtin controversially turned to America for defense. Australian troops fought desperately on the Kokoda Track in Papua New Guinea in brutal jungle warfare. Australian soldiers fought exhausted Japanese troops inch by inch along the treacherous 96-kilometer Kokoda Track through Papua New Guinea's Owen Stanley Range. In 1942, young Australians, many teenagers, stopped the Japanese advance and turned the tide of the Pacific War. After World War II, Immigration Minister Arthur Calwell launched Populate or Perish, transforming Australia through mass immigration. Millions of Europeans, Italians, Greeks, Poles, and later Vietnamese and Lebanese arrived as new Australians, permanently reshaping the nation's culture, cuisine, and identity. In 1967, over 90% of Australians voted yes in a landmark referendum to count Aboriginal people in the national census. Decades later, in 2008, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd delivered a formal apology to the stolen generations, Aboriginal children forcibly removed from their families by government policy. Australia today is a vibrant multicultural democracy built on the world's oldest living culture. From the red deserts of the Dreamtime to the gleaming Sydney Opera House, this nation carries 65,000 years of human story, still unfolding, still reconciling, still becoming what it is meant to be. 5 minutes is up, but the history keeps going. Let me know what topic you want condensed next in the comments below. See you in the next one.